Wisdom Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in and for choosing to spend some of your time with me. I am Maria Milagros. You are an incredible human being, whether you realize it or not. That is the truth about who you are. And unfortunately, in this world that we live in, we're told that we're not incredible unless we fit a standard. And so when we have a tendency to believe that about ourselves and to believe that about other people, we create these hindrances in our lives and in our relationships, right? So today I want to talk about bias, and I want to talk about it specifically dealing with racial bias because it's just necessary, and I feel compelled to have this conversation because, one, the day and age that we're living in. Two, we got to talk about it. We got to be okay and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And three, that's what I'm here for, right? I don't believe that every brown and black person has the responsibility of educating everyone else. But personally speaking, I do believe that that is part of my work, right? And so as a personal growth and development expert, and as a person who loves to have conversations to help elevate people and to bring us all as humans to the next level, there are sometimes hard conversations that need to be had. And for a lot of people, they get really uncomfortable. And if you find yourself already stirring and getting slightly uncomfortable 90 seconds in, then this is for you, right? You definitely need this, because the only way to find that growth within ourselves, to create that change that's going to happen within ourselves and then create positive change in the world so that we can truly go out there and start loving and living the life that we're meant to live harmoniously, is if we do this work. We have to get used to getting uncomfortable, because that's where growth happens, right outside of our comfort zones. So strap on your boots, get your shovels. We're going to move some stuff out of the way. We're going to get it done today. This is going to be a short video. So of course, this kind of conversation and this kind of work is big. It's huge. It's like a massive topic of conversation. But today we're going to keep it nice and condensed. And like I said before in a previous video, I do believe in spoon feeding. Right? Because again, I believe that that's part of my calling and my work. I don't think that everyone is ready for filet mignon. Some people are still on pureed carrots. That's real. So let's just take it right from the very top. Bias in and of itself is just a tendency to favor one thing more than the other. And every single human has biases. Every single human. I find it slightly agitating when I talk to someone else and I talk about bias and they're like, well, I don't have any biases because, and then they justify how they magically are bias-free. I'm not buying. I'm not buying your non-bias because all humans have biases. Personally speaking, I'm going to share a personal bit. When I was growing up, I was taught to assimilate as much as possible. I wore my hair curly from time I could remember, and because I wouldn't get a relaxer or straighten it, my mother just kind of abandoned doing my hair and was like, you're on your own. I can't handle all that hair, which was fine. And for me at that time, it was being defiant of my mother, but I didn't realize that it really was being defiant of this structure that says assimilate and blend and try and be like them as much as possible. And let me be clear, them is white people. So there was a unspoken directive that was be as white as possible, because there's privilege there, right? Now, no one ever said that directly, but they did say straighten your hair, don't go in the sun and get any darker, don't wear the hoop earrings, don't talk like that, don't listen to hip hop music, walk like this, act like this, wear gray and beige and bland colors like they do. So it was very clear of what the training was. Assimilate, blend, and it was a real struggle for me, because I'm sure for most people who have had similar experiences, because you want to love on all the things that make you unique and amazing and different and extraordinary, and yet you're being told by society and sometimes by your own people to try and blend as much as possible. So it becomes a real battle within yourself, or for me, it was within myself. So growing up, I didn't really have a lot of white people around me. I grew up in the Bronx. There was one girl that I can remember, and she lived on our block. She was a foster kid, and a bunch of teachers at our schools, but they weren't real people. Because, you know, when you were younger, like, teachers are like celebrities. They're not like real people. And if you see them at the supermarket, you're like, oh my God, they eat. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like that. And then eventually when we moved to Massachusetts, and there were white people everywhere, it was shocking. It was a culture shock. Truly, truly, it was. And interestingly enough, at that time, it was cool for white people to dress and go hip hop, right? So it was like, wait, I was taught to be like them, but now they trying to be like us. And it was like, right? So anyways, that was my experience growing up. And then when I would have interactions with white people, it was very clear to me that I was not worthy of their time and energy. They would say racist things. They would act very differently than I would see them exchange with other white people. They would talk down to me. So I'm being told to act and be like these people, but then I watch how they treat me and I'm like, oh my, they'll never include me. That's not real. And my whole life growing up, my whole family is brown and black. Right? Well, not my whole family, but the majority of my family is brown and black. So I have a bias towards brown and black people. My heart, and I feel almost like compelled to move in the direction of brown and black people because my experience is that is warm and that is inviting and that is love. And my experience is that I didn't have very many of those experiences from white people. It was not warm. It was not love. It was not kind. It was act like how we want you to act, assimilate and do right, and then we'll think about letting you in. So it was like an interesting, right? And even when we moved here, growing up, one of my best friends, she was white. My other friends, one was Hispanic and one was black. And even from the parents of the white one, it was like, not good enough, right? And it was like they microaggressions, like little things that they would say and do. So it was interesting because I didn't originally have this bias towards white people. I was actually told and taught to be more like. But then I eventually adopted this bias where I'm like, oof, cold, yes, warm, right? And we just move naturally to spaces that feel warm and fuzzy. So I share that with you just as a real, we all have biases because society and our families and school and churches try to program and indoctrinate us with beliefs. And then we have experiences that also alter those beliefs. So as much as the world's trying to program me to be this one thing, my experience is that that is not the greatest place to be. I would rather be over here. So we developed these biases. And then for my job, we ended up doing this Harvard, I think it was Harvard, some kind of bias test. And it asked me, do you have a bias? I said, yes, I have a bias towards brown and black people. I prefer them. And then at the end of the test, it's like, we have found that you have a moderate bias in preference of brown and black people. Shocking. I knew because I pay attention to myself and I'm willing to do the work, right? So of course I knew that. Okay, so in thinking about and talking about bias, I want you to just kind of acknowledge that it is a very natural and almost human tendency to create biases in every area of our life. If you ate a lot of macaroni and cheese and you had a stomach bug and then you threw up, you would automatically associate that with mac and cheese and not want to eat mac and cheese anymore. Bias towards mac and cheese, right? Most of us are biased towards our children. We think they're the most amazing things that walk the planet. At least I am, right? That's real. We all have our biases. So to say that I don't have any biases at all, knock it off. You're just wasting everyone's time with the bullshit. So just cut it out. Let's set that down. Okay, we're all good. And let's get on with doing the work. It reminds me of, when I don't know about you, but this is how I used to be. My house would be crazy, things all over the place. And then I knew people were coming over. So I'll take all that stuff and shove it in a room or shove it in a closet, and then you go to open that closet because you're looking for something specific and it all comes falling out. Or you look at this closet oh my goodness, this is crazy. That's what I feel like we've been doing when it comes to race relations and having hard conversations is let's just pretend it's fine. Let's just clean up the mess right here and shove it in this closet and close it. And then we don't have to look at it or see it. Out of sight, out of mind. That closet is busting. Matter of fact, that closet done exploded. It has spilled into your living room, and now rats are infested in that trash and all that garbage that you don't use and that is really not good for you anyways. It's time to purge and clean, y'all. It's time to get it up out the house, okay? That's my analogy for this moment. So I got 5 things that I want to share with you, recommendations, if you will, suggestions, darling, in hopes that if you start to practice these, they're going to help us recognize, deal with, and then overcome our biases so that we can truly live super sparkly everything lives where we are not just loving on ourselves, but we're truly giving from our overflow to every single human, regardless of their race or their gender or their sexual orientation. Enough. Like, for real, enough. Okay, so here we go. The first thing is prerequisite, acknowledgement, right? We talked about that, just acknowledging that you have biases. Everybody does, period. What they are or aren't is to be unpacked. But just say it out loud, like for yourself. Do everybody the favor so we can move forward with the work, right? Okay, so then the first thing that I want you, that I'm going to recommend is that you learn. Spend some time learning about race, about racism, both individually and systemically, right? Learn about where it all comes from. When you learn about the history of race and how it was created by a scientist, he just kind of made this stuff up, right? It's a whole thing. So when you learn about that, it really helps you keep perspective that there is no true divide. It was created to create a divide, to create control. So when we start to educate ourselves and learn about some of these basic foundational things, it changes the way that we perceive the world, and it changes our own internal mechanisms, our own biases. So this is really important work that needs to happen, right? We have to be intentional about carving out time to learn. And I'm not saying to run to every person that you know and like ask them to teach you. I'm saying do the work. Like, you do the research, do the work. Second thing that I would recommend is that you accept that while you're in this process of learning, there are going to be some hard and difficult feelings that arise. I have had these conversations many times, and a lot of white people will acknowledge that they feel shame or guilt because of what their ancestors did, or because they recognize that they themselves participated in the support of white privilege and biases, right? And in the doing that, that gets really hard. So I want you to accept that there are going to be some moments where it is going to be difficult, because if you're not used to talking about it, it's going to be uncomfortable until it gets comfortable, right? And when you pull it out of yourself and you look at it and say, oh my gosh, I feel shame, and here's why I feel ashamed, it takes away the power from the shame, from the guilt. And then you're almost like separating it from yourself, which then allows you to really do the work. Because so long as you're holding on to the shame and the guilt, you don't move forward. That's the reality. Whether you're holding on to shame and guilt when it comes to race relations, or you're holding on to shame and guilt from something else that happened in your past, we cannot move forward until we pull it almost outside of ourselves and have it here and hold it and acknowledge it and call it out and say, I know why you're here, and I know where you came from, and I know what you're called, and you don't have power over me anymore. And then creating this practice, right, of accepting these really difficult feelings that used to live in us until we get to a point where we start to dissipate their power so that we can like reinforce our own power to do the work, which is where we find our continual growth. The third thing is I want you to, or I recommend, I have to stop saying I want, or you should. No, I recommend. I recommend that you start to take some time through this research and this knowledge, through the acknowledgement of your feelings, to really explore your own biases. Like, where do they come from? How did they get here, right? So some of them, again, are through social media or through media in general. Some of them are through the movies and the magazines that are highly publicized and put in your face. Some of them are from friends and family. Some of them are from churches, For real, religion can be really dangerous. Well, I believe that religion in and of itself is dangerous because they have their own agenda a lot of times. So you want to be aware of that as well. Some of it's through music, some of it's through indoctrination, through the schools, through the systems. We all know that history classes are mostly whitewashed, right? Except for that 1 month a year where we talk about the 10 Black people that everybody knows who impacted our history. That we are like, Black and brown people have been erased from American history, and Black history is American history. So we have to start having more of these kind of acceptances, like, oh my gosh, I have these biases partly because the history was whitewashed. It was, right? And having those conversations, acknowledging that out loud, and then being willing to explore your own biases and where they come from. The other part, again, like for me, is through experiences. I developed my biases through my experiences and having these consistently cold encounters where I was treated a certain way. And then very clearly they would say, because you're Spanish, or because you're this, or because you're a woman, or because, right? So it became like an interesting, okay, I see you. And so I had a tendency to generalize everybody who looked like those people. And the expectation was I would move into a space and they would treat me the same way. I have since released the expectations and created room because I no longer need other people to validate or accept me because I fully validate and accept myself. So I'm moving up into a space like James Baldwin said, decide who you're going to be and let the world reckon with you, okay? And that's how I live now. Freedom. I'm not waiting for you to set me free. Freedom. Think about my daughter and I watched the movie Harriet, and even before that, you know, we've had these conversations because our family is very racially diverse. And so from a very young age, we've been unpacking this stuff and having these conversations. And I was very clear with her from a very young age. I want you to know that the slaves were not emancipated. They started to emancipate themselves, hence the Underground Railroad. And it was finally that the government went like, this is stirring up trouble. And we haven't been able to stop it, so we might as well join it so we can save our name, right? Like, let's be real. That's what really happened. And in thinking about that, when we watched Harriet, my daughter acknowledged, like, look, Mom, they're emancipating themselves. Absolutely. And so for me, and my message to other people who look like me and who don't look like me, right, is rather than waiting for other people to give you the validation that you think you need, or to emancipate you, or to provide you with your liberation or your freedom, take it. It's yours. You are a living, breathing human being, deserving and worthy of love and honor and respect and freedom, period. Right? And so we have to honor and own that and then move into the spaces of our lives from that place. What was this? I don't know, but you get what I'm saying. All right, moving on. The fourth thing that I would recommend is that we commit. We have to make a commitment to do this work because it is essential that we are choosing intentionally on a consistent and daily basis to be a part of the solution versus a part of the problem. And let me be clear. If you're not choosing a side, you're choosing, in this particular case, to be a part of the problem. If you're not choosing to do the work internally to address, to acknowledge, to face your own biases, your own discomfort, to do the learning, the expansion, the exploration that is necessary, then you are choosing with your silence, with your not choosing to be a part of the problem. Not deciding is a decision, right? So we have to commit intentionally as fellow human beings to do the work here first, so that when we move into the spaces and the interactions of our lives, we're doing that from a genuine place of love, of curiosity, of compassion, of respect for other humans, okay? And then the fifth and last thing that I would recommend in this particular case is connect. To make actual connections with people who do not look or speak or live like you. You would be mind blown. If you haven't done this, then you would be mind blown. If you meet someone who you think is so different from you that you have nothing in common with, and you actually take some time to get to know them, and it turns out you got a bunch of similarities. Who knew? I did. Well, I do now. I didn't always know. I learned this through the process, because it's all a process. I'm like getting crazy, knocking my laptop over. But we want to be intentional about making connections, about actually getting to know other people. And I want to be clear. There is a huge difference between contact and connections. A lot of people make contact meaning, oh, I work with a Black woman. That's contact. Have you invited that person over your house for dinner? Did you go to their family's house for an event or for dinner? Are you actually making real life connections rather than just contact, like bumping up against each other? Those are two very different things. And one of the best ways that we can unpack and dissolve our own biases is by having genuine connections with people that we have biases against, because it helps us dismantle those biases and go, oh my gosh, that bias came because of this incident or those 10 incidents or those 100 incidents, because that's real sometimes when you look like us. So sometimes it's that. And then we go, okay, that was that though. And this person is a different person. I can't put that on every person just because they look like that, right? And I'm speaking for myself, but I'm really speaking for all of us. When we make genuine connections, we are able to dissolve our biases because we're having authentic interactions with fellow human beings, right? So recap, okay, here's what I recommend to deal with and face your biases. Prerequisite, acknowledge that you have them, period. Then, first thing, learn. Learn about race and racism, individual racism and systemic racism. 2, accept that you are going to have some difficult feelings around all of this if it makes you uncomfortable until you get comfortable talking about it, right? 3, explore your own biases, where they come from, how you came to get them, because we cannot rectify what we do not identify. Holla. 4, commit to the work with and for yourself first and foremost, and then move throughout the world. And 5, make genuine real life connections for yourself, for the evolution of mankind. True story. So this is long, but it's a hard conversation. And it's actually shorter than my other talks about bias, so you're welcome. I saved you some time. If you have any questions, if you have anything that you want to talk about or anything you want to explore, please reach out, right? I won't be able to answer it immediately, but I will answer you, promise. And let's talk about it. Let's start to unpack all of this stuff and have these real conversations that need to be had, because enough is enough, right? Just to be clear, hashtag Black Lives Matter. And just to be clear, love is love is love is love. That's where I stand. Okay, if you like this, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. Your choice. If you feel so compelled, share it with somebody. Or not. Your choice. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, because we're going to have softer conversations packed with yummy little tools. We have story time, and then we have real harder conversations like this, which are necessary at certain times, because this is how we do the work to evolve. I love you, and there's nothing you could do about it, and not for any other reason other than you're a human deserving of love. That is super sparkly everything, my dear. Okay, I gotta go. I'll see you guys next time. Love and peace and happiness and joy and super sparkly everything. Peace.